Hello everyone and welcome to the Bird International L&E Club. In this podcast series, we will hear from our international team of employment law experts on a variety of cutting-edge topics. Each episode will provide 5 key takeaways on a key L&E theme with a US focus in 10 minutes. I'm Patty Walsh, a US-based partner within the L&E group here at Bird, and I co-head our San Francisco office. Hello everyone and welcome to our International L&E Club broadcast series, 5 key takeaways in 10 minutes. And today it's my pleasure to have Barbara Geck, one of my Frankfurt partners and really good friends. And Barbara is going to answer the question, German Works Council, what's it all about? Over to you, Barbara.
Thank you, Patty, for having me, and thank you for the kind words for introduction. And I find it a bit hard to thank you for the task you've been giving me, because 10 minutes for this topic is, to say the least, very ambitious. Let me start, even though we have little time, by giving you a very little background where we're actually coming from. The German system has basically 3 pillars of workers' engagement in sort of, let's say, the economy. One are trade unions, which of course is something you have almost everywhere. We have supervisory board representations and we have works council. And trade unions are sort of a bit different from the 2 other pillars, as they are sort of coming from the outside, and you're only represented by a trade union if you're actually a trade union member. The other 2 pillars represent more or less all employees of the company, with some few exceptions, but are sort of from the inside of the company. Well, employee representatives are found at supervisory boards of companies of more than 500 employees, but as this is sort of predominantly a corporate law issue and will not have an effect on sort of HR managers' daily life, we will skip those and concentrate on the works councils. Works councils are very much enshrined in our culture. Actually, in my research, I found that they date back to the mid of the 19th century, so the beginning of the industrialization. We had them in law since the Weimar Republic, so since 1920. And the current law dates back to 1972. And for us, it's just a normal way of doing business. I know for US clients, it's an outrageous idea. And to stress that it is for us very normal, I may quote my labor law professor at the university. He used to say that works councils were responsible for the German Wirtschaftswunder, so the successful reconstruction of the German economy after the Second World War, which was, of course, a very provoking statement, and I wouldn't exactly subscribe to that fully, but it has a point, because works councils are, in a way, stakeholders of the company. They have an interest in the company's success, and if you play it right, you actually can work together with them for the success of the company. Trade unions are sort of a bit more on the outside. They have an overview of the industry, but they don't know the company as well. They don't know the company's issues and problems as well. And they may also have their own agenda, a own political agenda, which may not necessarily be in sync with what the employees' workforce really wants. Just for the sake of completeness, not every company has a works council. So it is the decision of the employees to establish one, and all it needs is 3 employees that decide to form an election committee, and then enough candidates that ensures that every seat is filled. Whenever this happens, you cannot stop it. So whether this happens depends largely on the question whether the employees feel a need to be represented by a works council. And a good management and a good and considerate management that listens to the concerns of the employees is actually the best weapon against works councils, and the only one. Thus, if you want to prevent a works council from forming in your company, in your German outfit, make sure you manage your people well and with respect. So this is actually my first point. My second point is, do never underestimate them. Works council have strong rights, which basically come in 3 different types: mere information rights, consultation rights and co-determination rights in the strict and narrow sense. So sole information rights exist in particular in the area of so-called economic co-determination. So as soon as you employ more than 100 employees, the Works Council will form an economic committee. And this will consist not only of Works Council members, but also of other employees that have the necessary knowledge. For example, employees of the accounting department, so they can review the annual accounts of the company and explain to the Works Council what it actually means. The second type of rights are consultation rights. And here you will have not just to inform the Works Council, but give them the possibility to state their opinion. Information has to be given in good time before the final decision is taken to ensure that they can, in fact, still influence the decision making, at least in theory. And we are often asked by our clients, well, when do we have to inform? Tell us the date, or tell us the amount of days before the implementation. And this is an answer we cannot give. So it depends entirely on the topic and follows from the purpose that I've just stated. You should enable the Works Council to consult with you in earnest and actually, at least theoretically, influence your decision. And they need a certain time, and it depends on the topic how much time and how much information they need. In some cases, however, there are actually clear deadlines. So for example, if you wish to give notice of termination to an employee, you have to inform the Works Council about it and give them all the details relevant to the case at least 1 week before notice of termination is given. The point, however, that causes the greatest difficulty, and I think is most alien to many of our listeners, is what we would call the co-determination in the strict sense. For example, in Germany, you cannot hire an employee without the consent of the Works Council. And I know this will be considered to be quite outrageous and outlandish to you, but that's the case. You cannot introduce a new software without an agreement with the Works Council. You cannot alter a shift pattern or instruct an employee to work overtime without the actual consent of the Works Council. In practice, that can have sort of very different forms and meanings. So if you wish to hire an employee, the Works Council consent is deemed to have been given either if they have no objections raised within a week, or if the objections are not based on valid reasons as described by the law. If you want to introduce a new software, you will actually need an agreement with the Works Council setting out the details of the implementation and how the company may or may not use the data, for example, to monitor performance. If you cannot agree, the law requires you to go through an arbitration procedure where an independent arbitrator, typically a professional labor judge or a retired labor judge, will discuss the issue with both parties with a view of coming to an agreement. And this is a costly and lengthy process. My worst and longest arbitration process, it was actually about introducing a software, took 2 years. So bear that in mind. From the above, my third point is following. Don't make the Works Council your enemy, but make it your partner. So on what I said before, you can conclude that you need the Works Council in many ways. And from that already follows that you must work with them together to partner with them. And the law explicitly requires employer and employees to work together in good faith. And in practice, you will have to at least try to do that. Of course, you will have to choose your battles now and then, but you will always have to make sure that you maintain a trustful working relationship. Otherwise, worst case, you will have to go to court whenever you wish to hire someone, and when you get a new order in and that you can only cope with by working extra shifts on Saturday, you cannot do so unless you have the consent. And if you have made the Works Council your enemy, you risk to having to go through court or an arbitrator, which of course doesn't make sense in that circumstance. And a partnership is built on trust and respect. And if the Works Council gets the impression that they are not taken seriously and are not respected, you can easily lose their trust. This brings me to my fourth point, and seemingly the simplest one. Don't forget them. You may think this is ridiculous, but given that I've just told you that what a nuisance they can be, so how can you forget them? But herein lies the most frequent reason for losing the trust without any ill intention on the company's side. So think about a large international organization, which many of you will work in. And for example, somewhere in the IT department of the headquarters, the decision is made to introduce a new CRM system. The project is in full swing, a lot of time and money has been invested, and you want to roll out. And maybe here for the first time, the Works Council and possibly even local HR and local management learn about it. And now it starts. The Works Council tells you to put the project on hold till you have properly informed them, answered all your questions, have an agreement with them. They will even threaten to take you to court to stop the implementation, or if they learn about it after the implementation, which is also frequently the case, they will get the court order to stop the implementation. And now a process that under normal circumstances takes a lot of time and effort will get really difficult, and it will almost be impossible to mend now the relationship between the Works Council and the company. And the Works Council will now, of course, scrutinize the project much more thoroughly, because they will start to wonder, or they will wonder, what are they hiding from me? Why didn't they tell me in the first place? I had a case where there was a large project. The security architecture of a group of company was sort of put on completely new feet. And more or less by chance, the EMEA HR manager ended up in a conference call about this project. She wasn't herself quite clear why she was suddenly invited. But of course, in the course of the call, at some point she said, oh, by the way, has anybody thought about the Works Councils? You can imagine that at this moment, she wasn't the most popular person in the room. But I think she was the most valuable and most important person, because without her, they would just have rolled it out, and then they would have had to stop the project, at least for Germany, which not in every project is possible to simply carve out one country. So it is important that you make sure that within your organization, even in the US, even wherever the decisions are taken, in Singapore, in India, they are aware that they should at least ask the question, is that a subject of Works Council consultation or not? And now that I have hopefully frightened you out of your wits, I come to my last point, and that is make them your ally. I mentioned that Works Council and companies are very often referred to as the partners of the company. And if you at least try to embrace the idea and try to manage a good relationship with the Works Council, they can even help you. So if, for example, you structure a business and have to lay off people, of course, you will have a long and fierce debate with the Works Council about, is it really necessary? Can't we change the scope? Can't we do this and that differently? And of course, about the money the company is prepared to pay. Now, once you have come to an agreement, it kind of lays, it renders credence to your decision. The workforce will understand, okay, the company has made a decision. The Works Council tried to prevent it, tried to alter it, but ultimately at the end saw the need for it as well. And therefore, they're going ahead together. And also, Works Councils can, in these scenarios or in many other scenarios, have some background talks with employees about certain issues that can give you an idea what is possible and what is not possible. So, for example, they can sound for you who would be willing to sign a voluntary package and make the whole process easier for you. And therefore, this is my final statement. Don't be frightened, but try to work with them in good faith, make them your ally, and then it actually will be to the benefit of both parties.
Thank you so much indeed, Barbara. You did frighten me to death and took me out the other side. But what was so interesting as well was understanding the broader context, the history, and the importance that's given to the role of the Works Council, which you have to understand to really embrace the concept. Thank you so much as ever. Thank you for listening to today's podcast. We hope you join us again and look out for more content coming soon.